A greener and cleaner world. That and more is what policies like the Inflation Reduction Act aim to achieve. But are our efforts being underwritten by an adversarial power on the other side of the world? In this special report, we look at how the Chinese regime could be reaping the rewards of new industries, while American citizens get buried under higher energy prices here at home. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Harnessing the power of Mother Nature to fuel our lives. Green and renewable have become buzzwords for the energy sector, spurred on by companies looking to jump on the next profitable venture and rights groups calling for a cleaner planet. The U.S. is the latest to join the trend, with the Biden administration passing the Inflation Reduction Act. It involves many of Washington's green energy deals and is labeled as something to help clean up our planet and make our lives better. But who's really benefiting?
You have to look at where the money's being spent and who's in charge of spending the money.
That's Rex M. Lee, cybersecurity advisor at MySmart Privacy. He notes there could be some conflicts of interest the public isn't being made aware of.
I started to see a conflict of interest regarding who was in charge of these companies or who their board members were. And one of the ties that I found that was a conflict of interest was Andre Hines, who's the stepson of John Kerry. So getting back to how this money is being spent is obvious. The VC fund that he's associated with is obvious. How much are they going to benefit from this $350 billion?
He adds this isn't a partisan issue since both sides are involved.
And this is not a Democrat or Republican problem. It's both. It's both parties. I go back to a quote that Eric Schmidt, he's the former chairman of Alphabet and CEO of Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. And he was at an Atlantic magazine conference. And he was talking about when he first came to Washington to represent Alphabet and Google, he had never done that before, and he didn't know really how the game was played. And he was surprised, and his quote from the conference was quite shocking. Eric Schmidt had this to say. He said that Washington is a town full of incumbent politicians where the lobbyists end up writing the laws.
Well, Wall Street is a familiar term. What is K Street?
These are law firms that represent major corporations, whether they're U.S. corporations or foreign corporations, even corporations from China, as we're learning. And these law firms are usually populated by former advisors, political advisors for both the Republican and Democrat parties, as well as former legislators go to work for these law firms as well.
Past examples of that corruptive influence, which started with lobby groups on K Street, Huawei, and TikTok. These were companies considered national security risks, but somehow managed to get those labels either removed or softened.
A former Trump advisor, David Urban, represents American Continental Group, which is a K Street law firm. They call themselves an advocacy group, and they represent ByteDance. Tony Podesta represents Huawei, and their lobbying efforts go directly back to the White House, which means that that he has a direct line to Joe Biden, the president, just like John Podesta does. And Huawei, again, is allowed to market in the United States as a result of having some of Trump and Obama's executive orders repealed by the Biden administration.
Those are past examples. Now, when it comes to green energy, Lee says we're seeing something similar.
We just learned that John Podesta, who is also a former advisor to the Clinton administration regarding the environment, and also the Obama administration, has been brought on to allocate the funds for the Green Initiative and the Inflation Reduction Act. What I can't find is any oversight in how this money is being spent and what companies are going to benefit from it.
If the name Podesta rings a bell, Tony Podesta is John Podesta's brother. Tony Podesta is the one who helped lobby Huawei. Meanwhile, John Podesta is the one just tapped by the White House to lead the White House's clean energy and climate team. But Lee says there's more than just meets the eye.
When you have lawmakers and their family members who stand to benefit from $350 billion, that's over $250 billion that's going to be spent on these green initiatives, then I see some issues there that need to be followed up on.
What does that background mean when it comes to China? There are even more players involved.
A lot of people think that green energy means the end of all the oil companies like Shell, Chevron, and Exxon. No, it doesn't. They're heavily vested in green energy as well. And through lobbying, they're benefiting highly from this. Regarding Shell in particular, their lobbying efforts are part of a $70 million investment with other companies, including AT&T in the state of Texas. They spent about $70 million, but they're getting billions of dollars in benefits and tax reductions, as well as subsidies for these green technologies. Whether they're profitable or not, these companies will make money. And this is happening with companies from China.
There's another concern. It's not just the profit factor, but the potential partnerships with a foreign nation, one that sees us as the enemy.
The other conflict of interest that I found as well had to do with lithium refining companies, one in China and one in the United States. Altair in the United States is a refining company out of Pittsburgh, and they named Paul Pelosi Jr. to their board, who's Nancy Pelosi's son, and they're a lithium refining company, as well as BHR in China.
Lee notes this reaches all the way up the chain to those in power.
From what I understand, one of Hunter Biden's investment groups or businesses that he owns has a 10% stake in that lithium refining company out of China.
If we dig into the Inflation Reduction Act and look at the numbers, a push for green makes up the bulk of the legislation, $385 billion over 5 years. That includes tax benefits and $40 billion in loan guarantees to promote carbon capture and clean hydrogen at electric facilities. And part of the push for green means more reliance on a certain market, China.
Most of the manufacturing for green technologies is occurring in China today. So they need power to do that. And what power sources are they using? They're not using green or renewable energy to even manufacture green or renewable technologies. They're using coal as their primary factor. And as they increase their coal plant production in China, that definitely offsets any decreases in Western countries like Europe, Europe and the United States and so forth.
One recent development is California's announcement of banning gas-powered cars by 2035. While used gas cars can still be sold, all new cars will have to be electric. And since California makes up such a big percent of the car market, what happens in California doesn't just stay in California. It ripples out to all U.S. states. With California's demand for an increase in electric vehicles, manufacturers will need to boost production for lithium-ion batteries. Those require materials known as rare earth metals.
Those batteries are being manufactured in China, and there's two key resources needed to manufacture those batteries. One is lithium, and the other one is cobalt. And cobalt it becomes very concerning because we're going to become even more energy dependent on China regarding cobalt, because about 95% of cobalt mining is done in Africa through Chinese companies that have worked with the governments in Africa to mine the cobalt over there. So all the cobalt today where this technology flows back into China. Lithium, it's very similar, but only about 62% of lithium will flow back through China as well. But it's still the majority of lithium also will flow back through China, which means we'll be heavily energy dependent on China for green technologies.
Most electric cars use lithium-ion batteries, and right now, China dominates that market by as much as 80%. 6 out of the 10 biggest EV battery makers are based in China. And now that reliance on China for EV batteries is raising some red flags. The U.S. is trying to catch up, President Biden plans to invest in domestic lithium mining, a key material used in EV batteries. But ramping up mining is just the beginning. Lithium processing is a complicated and capital-intensive process. Research estimates it could take the U.S. years and an over $170 billion investment to catch up. Despite the cars being clean, battery production is not. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than a year. Here's what to look out for in our second half. Experts bring us more details on the concerns surrounding green energy, plus how the Chinese regime is undercutting our efforts to clean up the environment, and what steps can be taken to reverse it. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. And before you go, a quick update. Chenny Wu will be filling in for me tomorrow while I'm away. I will see you all on Saturday. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you soon.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore ShenyunCreations.com.